Hello, everyone. I promised that I would do a review of each episode of season one of Amazon's The Rings of Power. And so this is a review of episode 8, the final episode for this season, and some comments about the season as a whole. I have to apologize for the delay in this review. I was at a conference and I wasn't able to record this until after I came back. So let me start with running through the episode. I'm not going to talk about everything that happened. Presumably, at this point, you either already watched the episode or you're not going to watch it anyhow. Maybe you gave up on watching the rest of this series, but perhaps you have a slight interest in comments. I don't know. So I won't run through all the action. I'm interested in how many scene switches there were, and I'll make some comments along the way. So we start out first scene in episode 8. It's creepy cultists and Meteor Man, and we learn that the creepy cultists, those are those three evil-looking females dressed in very nice, beautiful white robes. They think he's Sauron, and they've come to help him and pledge their allegiance. From there, it switches to Lindon, where Gil-galad and Elrond and others are they're trying to figure out how to save the elves with this little shard of mithril they have, because Durin isn't going to give them any more, and they only have a little bit. And what can they do? They're worrying about that. And then we switch to Numenor, and then back to Lindon again. So there's 4 already. Now I got to say, in this second go around with Lindon, we see Gil-galad, supposed to be High King of the Elves in Middle Earth. What a buzzkill he is. Every idea Elrond has to try to save the elves in Middle Earth, he just says, no, that's not going to work. We're leaving. We're doomed here. It's not going to work. But one interesting thing, if you did watch it, this scene, is right at the end of the scene, and very briefly, you get a glimpse of his spear. That is the spear that he's going to use against Sauron in the final battle, if we ever get to witness it. The spear of Gil-galad. I had to back the thing up, look again to see what was that. Oh, this is, well, it's more a lance, a spear, or something long. Okay. Then it switches to a sort of a menage a trois with the Harfoots, the creepy cultists, and Meteor Man. And this is one of 2 scenes that I thought dragged on too long, and it's mostly an action sequence. And again, the action's kind of disorganized and not that realistic, but consistent with the other action sequences we've seen in this production. Anyhow, we do learn that he is a wizard, because the cultists at some point referred to him as one of the Istari, or Ishtar, which means he's a wizard. Now, nobody says his name. They don't say well, they thought he was Sauron. He doesn't know who he is. Everybody, all the commentators say he's going to be Gandalf. Now, I argued against him being Gandalf only because I don't want him to be Gandalf. It's just so obvious. Once again, it's so much like they're just copying Peter Jackson's movies, which were vastly better than this. They should come up with some other idea. It could still fit that he was one of the 2 blue wizards. Why? Well, because the blue wizards were in the Far East, in in Lord of the Rings, the creepy cultists tell Meteor Man that he needs to go to Rune, to RHUN, to remember who he really is and learn to control his powers and stuff. Well, Rune is in the east. He needs to go to the east. He even confirms this to the Harfoots, saying that it's not just that the cultists told him he needs to go there. He actually feels inside that he does need to go there. And that would fit with Blue Wizards. And I still say a lot of the magic that he's revealed has been sort of air magic, and blue, sky, air, all would kind of fit together. You could have made him a Blue Wizard, Amazon showrunners, or he could even be Radagast. This is a notion that I really resisted the first time I heard it, mainly because, this guy looks absolutely nothing like the character that played Radagast in Peter Jackson's movies. But hey, that's not going to stop him, because look at Elrond. I mean, the Elrond in this series looks absolutely nothing like the Elrond in Peter Jackson's movies. And I think it's a shame, because it's jarring to anybody that likes the Lord of the Rings. They watched Jackson's movies. Most people loved Jackson's movies. Excuse me. Why shouldn't they use a character that has some kind of resemblance to the character in that? But anyway, he does physically. He looks more like a Gandalf or a Saruman than he would look like Radagast. But in the scene where he kind of blasts the three creepy cultists, if you've noticed, it seems like a bunch of insects kind of came out of the cloud, one of which was a large butterfly or maybe a moth, something like that. Well, we know that Radagast loved animals and plants. That would be consistent with a Radagast sort of magic, maybe. And also remember back when he was trying to heal the trees in the apple orchard that got blasted. There was another, healing of plants that it would be consistent with a Radagast. Probably not. They've probably taken the very obvious route, which the show has pretty much done all along. Like everybody was saying that Halbrand is Sauron. I didn't think Halbrand should be Sauron. I know Sauron in the lore can take any form that he wants, really. So therefore he could look like Halbrand. But the lore has never stopped this show from doing other things anyhow. And he just didn't seem to fit. And I thought, if anything, maybe he would become one of the kings of men that Sauron gave a ring to, and he got corrupted that way. But no, the obvious, I thought it was a misdirect, but no, he's Sauron. So there's other, a bunch of other things like that in the show that they look so obvious that you figure it's got to be a misdirect. They're going to give it a twist that surprises you. But no, you were right all along. So I suppose he's going to be Gandalf, although I don't think he should be. Anyhow, back to the scene shifts. Sorry. Boats. Next, it's a boat scene with Elendil and Muriel, the Queen Regent, go. And I suppose there's got to be some other people on the ship, probably somebody steering the ship, perhaps somebody managing the sails and whatnot, and whatever soldiers were left from the battle. Not that you see them, but you presume there's others there. Anyhow, they're on their way back to Numenor. From there, you get to Numenor. The big reveal here is that the actual king, Tar Palantir, has died. Elendil sees that as the boat pulls into the harbor, because there's a bunch of ships with black sails, and this is some kind of a traditional mourning process for when the king of Numenor dies. And that was the only reveal out of the boat scene and the arrival at Numenor scene is, okay, Tar Palantir is dead, which leaves the way open for Pharazôn to try to seize power and basically destroy Numenor with little help from Sauron on the way. Should be happening, because Muriel has already said she's going back with more army she's gonna fight. Okay, then it's back to Lyndon again. This is the third time now, and they're still trying to figure out what to do with the Mithril, even though Gil-galad says it's useless. And then it's back to Meteor Man again. Finally, it's back to Lyndon again. And in that pretty much last scene, the elves finally forged their 3 rings. So that's the big accomplishments of an hour and 15 minutes final episode. Is we learn that the king Tar Palantir has died in Numenor. We learn that Meteor Man is a wizard, although it's not revealed who. We learned that Halbrand is Sauron. And I think that's it. And that the elves crafted 3 rings. They got 4 things accomplished. Of the 2 overly long scenes I mentioned, one was the Ménage à Trois with the Harfoots, the creepy cultists, and Meteor Man. The other one was this, what I felt was an overly protracted scene between Galadriel and Halbrand / Sauron, when she's finally figured out that he is Sauron and she confronts him, which leads to him giving her a number of visions and then disappearing. Nobody seems to have noticed where he went or how he went, but by the time she comes to, he's gone. Then she tells the other elves, she tells Elrond and Celebrimbor, hey, if you see him again, don't let him anywhere near the forge. Even though she doesn't explain that he's Sauron. Why doesn't she explain what she's figured out? Or is she embarrassed that she didn't see what 90% of the audience, everybody but me, saw in episode 1, that he's Sauron? Is it she's too proud to admit that she was deceived, or what? As usual, it's not clear why she can't just come out and say it. Anyhow, it also felt like the episode once again was running at about half speed. Such long pauses between one person speaking and the next person responding, or even between one sentence and another sentence from the same character. It's like they're trying to stretch this thing out. They have a flimsy as well as not good dialogue, and they're just trying to make it last longer. As usual, most of the dialogue was mediocre. But I will say that thinking about the dialogue in all 8 episodes of season 1, this was probably the best of the 8. Not that it was great. It was just a little better than the other 7 at times, in places. So many unrealistic things as usual in this episode, and we saw the start of this in episode 7. Halbrand / Sauron is on his deathbed with this huge wound in his abdomen that's turning necrotic, and he's about to die. And Galadriel says, "What, he needs elven magic?" Oh, so next thing you know, he's like pole vaulting onto a horse. I mean, just hops on a horse and they ride halfway across the continent. Got to be at least a week minimum. No problem. No problem. Even though he was on his deathbed. And then I don't know, just sprinkle some of that seed dust in the wound or something. And like within hours, he's so well that he's snooping around the forge and talking with Celebrimbor about how to use the mithril. Not that Celebrimbor would ever wonder why some common mortal would have better ideas than he, who's thousands of years old and is a master at elven craft, or why he would even allow him in the room at all. No problem. We just accept it. But this thing about him riding across the continent mortally wounded was about as realistic as those little boats that Numenor sent to Middle Earth that were supposed to be holding 150 soldiers and horses and all their weapons and their armor and provisions and God knows what else. You look at the boats, and I mentioned this in a previous episode. At best, they could hold 20, maybe 25 men, but no horses. I mean, they were too small. Again, that was another ridiculous one. Or others have pointed out how the Numenorian army on their horses that shouldn't be there seem to be able to magically teleport themselves across the landscape from the shore right to short ways away from the battle in what becomes Mordor, like that. Which leads me to the overall commenting on the season. It's bad. It's so bad that it's hard to find the good in it. And the music was mediocre. The dialogue was basically terrible. It was pathetic. The acting was mediocre. And it's here, it's a little hard to know how much is just inexperienced or incapable actors and how much of it is bad directing. Particularly hard to know because most of the actors, nobody's seen them do anything before. So you don't know what they could be capable of. There are a couple of actors in season one that did have some presence about them where you sensed they could do some really good acting, like Elendil, like Arondir. I thought was pretty good, even though he doesn't have a lot to say, but he's got a good presence about him. Adar, this first father of the orcs, he was good, but most of it, well, Meteor Man, he was okay, but a lot of them just do not live up to what you expect out of their acting. The pacing, super slow. The sense of time, non-existent. When you cut from one scene to another scene, you can't tell if that's the next day or if it's a week later or if it's 3 months later. Sometimes things happen that look like they should have taken a long time to happen. Like, for example, when they start building the tower in Linden where they're going to forge the elven rings. I mean, one day there's nothing there. The next day, the whole outline of the tower is there. It must have taken at least a month. And yet the dialogue of the characters give you zero sense of how this happened. It's like it's the next day as far as the dialogue is concerned. So terrible sense of no absent sense of time. The music was insipid for the most part. I guess to me the best parts about it were some of the cinematography. It was filmed in New Zealand. Well, they got fantastic landscapes there, so can't give Amazon too much credit for that. And then some of the computer graphics were very nice. Not all of them, but some of the computer graphics were good. Um, Overall, I would probably rate this D plus as a series. And I think this is the only series in my entire life that I've watched for this long and I would rate so poorly. Yes, I have seen worse. I have seen worse TV series, but I only bothered with one or maybe two episodes, and then I concluded this is not worth my time. I'm not going to watch it. Here I watched all 8 episodes. Why? Well, because I loved Tolkien's writing. I loved his novel, The Lord of the Rings. It's a classic. I love Peter Jackson's movie adaptations. And I really wanted to see, at least to the end of the first season, what Amazon had done. And after a while, it became, like watching a comedy, like, oh, what's coming this time? I had to see the end of season 1. Will I watch season 2? That's looking very doubtful, which reminds me of another point. The showrunners did a TV interview, and they were asked, "Are you listening to the fan feedback? Are you going to make any adaptations to season 2 based on the feedback you're getting?" And basically, they said, "No, no, no, we're not going to change anything based on the fan feedback." But for one thing, the script's already all written. So we're not going to throw that out. We did learn a lot of things along the way doing season 1, so we're going to incorporate what we've learned into doing season 2. Really? You did? What exactly did you learn doing season 1? Because I couldn't see any improvement really from episode 1 through episode 8. It looked like the same mess all along. So where was the learning? The management of Amazon and Amazon Prime, they really ought to terminate the 2 showrunners slash script writers. Pretty much burn season 2's script. Start over with a competent writer, a writer that has done good work, compelling work. You spent all this money, and even though season 1 was a disaster, you're unwilling to change season 2? I mean, this is not just the showrunner's decision. This is Amazon's decision. Are you going to just ride the boat all the way to the bottom of the ocean? Or are you going to try to fix the boat? They've already said it's going to take a couple of years before season 2 is ready anyhow. Well, you need a new script. You need new writers. You need new screenwriters. You need a new director. You need to bring back the experts in the back lore that you got rid of. Bring them back if you can. So whether I watch any of season 2 or not is going to depend on whether I'm hearing that they're making major modifications or if they're really going to use the same 2 showrunners and the same script they already wrote. It won't be worth it. So I guess we got a couple of years to wait before not watching season 2. Thank you, and have a good couple of years.